In the heart of Lagos, in a modest but neat two-bedroom apartment, Aisha sat by the window, fanning herself with a worn-out magazine. The mid-morning sun spilled gold across the living room, but the warmth couldn't melt the unease in her chest. Her husband, Tunde, was pacing the small space, his phone pressed tightly against his ear. "You see, Baba, I need the supplier to deliver on time," Tunde was saying. "I've done everything I could on my end." He paused, and Aisha caught the faint line of worry on his forehead. Tunde hung up and sighed, running a hand through his neatly combed hair. He turned to Aisha, eyes wide with hope and a hint of desperation. "Aisha, remember what Mama Tunde told me, that for a man to prosper, his wife must be generous to people. I think it's time we put that to the test." Aisha blinked. Mama Tunde's words had always floated around their home like incense smoke, fragrant but vague. "You mean just give things to people?" she asked, a skeptical eyebrow raised. "Not just things," Tunde said, voice lowering with gravity. "Time, kindness, whatever the situation calls for. If we follow her advice, wealth will come. I'm telling you, Aisha, I feel it in my bones. We've been careful, smart even, but we've been holding back. Mama said generosity opens the path to prosperity." Aisha looked down at her hands, neatly folded in her lap. She had grown up believing in hard work, strategy, and caution. Superstitions were for her mother's village stories. Yet, something in Tunde's pleading eyes tugged at her, a mix of love, fear, and hope. "All right," she said finally, her voice soft. "I'll try, but let's be smart about this. We can't just throw money at anyone who asks for it." Tunde's face broke into a grin. "That's my wife. Small steps. We start today." That afternoon, as Aisha walked through the busy streets of Surulere, she noticed a little boy with torn shoes and a small pleading smile. Her first instinct was hesitation. She had bills to pay, groceries to buy, but then she remembered Tunde's words and the story of Mama Tunde. "Here," she said, handing him the 20 naira note she had intended for a bottle of water. The boy's eyes widened, and he whispered a timid, "Thank you, Ma." As she walked away, Aisha felt a strange flutter in her chest. It wasn't just the warmth of giving. It was as though a door had opened somewhere deep inside her, a door she didn't know existed. Back home, Tunde met her at the door, eyes twinkling. "How was it?" Aisha smiled, unsure why her heart felt lighter. He smiled," she said simply. "I guess it feels okay." Tunde laughed, a sound full of relief. "That's all it takes, Aisha. Just one step. Watch how the universe responds." That night, as Aisha lay in bed staring at the ceiling, she wondered if she had just performed a small act of kindness or taken the first step into a world where generosity could really change everything. The city hummed outside, alive with possibilities she couldn't yet imagine, and deep down, a tiny spark of hope whispered, maybe, just maybe, Mama Tunde was right. The following morning, Aisha woke with a restless energy she couldn't quite explain. The sunlight spilled through the window, but instead of comfort, it brought a sense of expectation, as if the city itself were holding its breath. She remembered the small boy from yesterday, his wide eyes and shy smile. It lingered in her mind, a spark she couldn't ignore. By mid-morning, Aisha had made her way to the local market. Tunde had gone to meet a client, leaving her to her own devices. The market was a bustling mosaic of color and sound, vendors shouting prices, women haggling, children weaving through stalls with sticky hands. Aisha wondered, unsure what she was looking for, until she saw her first real test. A woman sat on the edge of the dusty walkway, cradling a small bundle wrapped in a faded cloth. Her face was tired and drawn, eyes flicking up occasionally to meet passers-by, silently pleading. Aisha's first instinct was to pass, to keep moving. After all, she had bills to pay, groceries to buy. She wasn't made of endless generosity. But something tugged at her chest. She thought of Tunde, of Mama Tunde's words, and of the strange warmth she had felt yesterday. With a hesitant step, she approached the woman. "Good morning, Ma. Please, anything you can spare."
Aisha reached into her bag, her fingers brushing against the last of her money for the week. She pulled out a 100 naira note, then paused. It wasn't much, but it was something. "Here," she said, pressing it into her hand. The woman's eyes widened. "God bless you, ma. You won't regret this. God bless you and your family." Her voice trembled with sincerity. Aisha stepped back, heart pounding. She felt a strange lightness, almost a release. Something inside her shifted, and she realized generosity wasn't just about money. It was about connection, recognition, and care. She had given, and in return, she had received a fleeting glimpse of joy, raw and human. As she continued through the market, Aisha noticed the subtle ways her actions seemed to ripple outward. The stall owners smiled at her in ways they hadn't before. A man selling roasted corn even offered her an extra cob without asking for payment. She frowned, unsure if it was coincidence, superstition, or something else entirely, but the feeling of potential was intoxicating. That evening, she returned home to find Tunde pacing the living room again, his eyes bright with anticipation. "Well?" he asked, practically bouncing. "Tell me about today. Did you—" Aisha smiled, though her cheeks were flushed with exhaustion. "I did. I gave money to a woman in the market. She thanked me in a way I didn't expect. It felt good, Tunde." Tunde clasped her hands, his excitement palpable. "See? One act and the universe begins to respond. This is just the beginning, Aisha. Just the beginning." Aisha nodded, lying back on the sofa, her mind spinning with possibilities. She couldn't deny the strange thrill that coursed through her, but even as she let herself feel it, a tiny part of her whispered caution. She had no idea what challenges lay ahead, or how far this path would stretch her, but she had taken the first step, and for now, that was enough. Outside, the city hummed on, indifferent yet alive, carrying with it the promise of tests, trials, and unexpected blessings. The days following Aisha's second acts of generosity passed in a blur of small, unexpected miracles. It began subtly. A neighbor who had always been distant offered to watch Tunde's car when he had urgent meetings. A client of Tunde's mentioned that a supplier had cut them a better deal, seemingly out of nowhere. Aisha couldn't help but notice the pattern, and a part of her wondered if Mama Tunde's words were true. One Saturday morning, she decided to take a walk in their neighborhood, carrying a small bag of rice and sugar. She had intended to give it to the elderly woman who lived a few streets away, the one who always waved at her with trembling hands. When she arrived, she found the woman struggling to carry 2 heavy buckets of water. "Oh, Aisha, my dear," the woman gasped. "You always think of me. Thank you." Aisha set down the bag and helped carry the water into the house. As she did, she noticed the woman's small garden thriving against the odds, flowers and vegetables growing in neat rows. "Your garden, it's beautiful," she said. "Ah, blessings, my dear. Give a little, receive a little. You see, even the soil responds to kindness," the woman said with a knowing smile. The words struck Aisha in a way she hadn't expected. Generosity, it seemed, was contagious. It changed not just the receiver, but the giver, and even the world around them. Back at home, Tunde noticed the changes too. Business calls seemed smoother, clients more agreeable, and even their old neighbors began stopping by, offering tips or small favors without being asked. One evening, a supplier who had always been difficult called to apologize for a late delivery and offered a discount on their next order. Tunde beamed. "See, Aisha, it's working. People respond to your kindness. It's not just superstition, it's a force." Aisha smiled, but couldn't ignore the nagging doubts that lingered. Not everyone they helped seemed grateful. At the market, a young man had borrowed money from her and vanished without a word. She felt the sting of betrayal, a cold reminder that generosity could be risky. Still, The warmth she felt from her other acts kept her going. Each kind gesture built momentum, as if her life were part of a larger tapestry she could not yet see in full. Her heart was opening, and with it, her perspective on wealth, success, and happiness. By the end of the week, Aisha had begun to notice a transformation in herself. She smiled more freely, her anxiety eased, and even her small apartment felt lighter, brighter. And though Tunde's business had not yet exploded with fortune, there was a palpable shift in their lives, a ripple effect that stretched beyond money, reaching into relationships, opportunities, and unexpected joys. One evening, as she prepared dinner, Tunde reached across the table and took her hand. "Aisha, I know it's been tiring, but this is just the beginning. You are not just helping me, you are helping everyone around us. And maybe, in some way, helping yourself too." Aisha squeezed his hand and nodded, a sense of quiet determination settling over her. She had passed the first tests, faced small disappointments, and yet the path ahead seemed brighter than anything she had imagined. The ripple had begun, and she had a feeling it would grow into something unstoppable. Outside, Lagos carried on, indifferent yet alive, a city of endless possibilities, and Aisha felt for the first time that she was no longer just surviving. It was as if she was part of a wave, moving forward, carrying blessings with every step.
Aisha had begun to feel the rhythm of generosity as part of her daily life. Each act of kindness, whether a small word, a helping hand, or a few naira, brought unexpected joy. But with growth came strain. It started on a sweltering Thursday afternoon. She was walking home from the market when a young man stumbled out of a narrow alley, clutching his stomach. "Ma, please, I haven't eaten all day. Just please, anything," he said, desperation etched on his face. Aisha reached into her bag. She had only enough money to cover groceries for the week, and Tunde's upcoming client meeting meant their savings were tight. Her fingers hovered over the bills, a battle waging in her heart. She wanted to help. She wanted to uphold the path they had started, but she also had responsibilities. "Please," the man said again, his voice almost a whisper. Aisha closed her eyes. She could feel the pull of Tunde's words, of Mama Tunde's belief. Generosity could bring blessings, but what if she gave and lost what little security they had? The temptation to say no was strong, almost overwhelming. Finally, she handed him a small portion of food from her bag, along with 50 naira. The man's eyes filled with gratitude, and he muttered, "God bless you, Ma. You are truly kind." He ran off before she could say anything else. Aisha walked home slowly, a mix of relief and anxiety twisting in her chest. She felt exhausted, stretched thin, and even a little resentful. That evening, Tunde noticed her quiet demeanor. "What's wrong?" he asked, gently. I gave food to someone today. I shouldn't have. We barely have enough for ourselves. I'm starting to wonder if this path is really sustainable." Tunde frowned, but he didn't scold her. Instead, he took her hand and said, "Aisha, it's hard. That's the test. Generosity is never easy. People will take advantage. Sometimes it will hurt, sometimes it will frustrate you. But this is where faith comes in. Trust that the good you put out will come back in ways you can't yet see." Aisha nodded, though doubt still lingered. The next days brought more tests. A distant cousin appeared, asking for a large sum to start a business. A neighbor requested help with a rent shortfall. A friend needed money to pay for her child's school fees. Every request tugged at her conscience, and each time she hesitated, questioning whether her generosity was being exploited. One evening, exhausted and on the verge of tears, she sat alone on the balcony. The city lights blinked like distant stars, indifferent to her struggles. Could giving really bring wealth, or was she simply being naive? She thought of the small ripple of blessings she had seen, Tunde's improved business calls, the smiles of those she helped, and wondered if it was enough to outweigh the strain. It was in that quiet moment that Aisha realized something.
Generosity was not a guarantee of reward, nor a simple transaction. It was a test of courage, patience, and resilience. The temptation to stop, to protect herself, was powerful, but if she gave in, the path would end before it had truly begun. The next morning, with a deep breath, she resolved to continue, but she would be smarter, more discerning, and more patient. The universe, she decided, demanded not blind giving, but thoughtful generosity. And somewhere deep down, a small spark of hope remained. If she could navigate these tests, the blessings she sought and the wealth Tunde dreamed of might finally arrive.
The weeks that followed tested Aisha more than ever. Requests for help came from every corner. Neighbors, distant relatives, even strangers who had somehow heard of her kindness. Each act of generosity weighed on her, but she noticed the subtle shifts around her. Tunde's business was steadily growing, clients were more cooperative, and small opportunities seemed to appear out of nowhere. One evening, as the couple sat together reviewing finances, Tunde paused and looked at Aisha with a thoughtful smile. "Do you see it now?" he asked. "All these little things, the discounts, the favors, the goodwill, they are adding up. It's not magic, Aisha. It's influence, trust, and respect. People want to do business with someone who's generous, kind, and fair." Aisha nodded slowly. She had begun to understand. Generosity wasn't a mystical formula. It was a catalyst for positive change. Her kindness had built relationships, inspired loyalty, and opened doors that would have otherwise remained closed. Then came the final test. One afternoon, Tunde received news of a major investment opportunity, a contract that could multiply their business several times over. But it required a substantial upfront payment. Panic surged through them both. The money they had saved from careful spending and modest acts of generosity was not enough. Aisha felt a familiar tug of doubt. She could panic, refuse to act, or take the risk. But something inside her reminded her of all she had learned. Generosity had taught her patience, discernment, and courage. She proposed a plan. Instead of borrowing recklessly, they would approach partners they had helped over the past weeks, seeking collaboration rather than mere profit. Tunde followed her lead, and the result was astonishing. Suppliers offered favorable terms, clients agreed to early payments, and even the young man she had fed weeks ago returned, not for money, but to connect a small investor he knew. The network she had built through genuine acts of kindness had created a foundation stronger than any bank loan. That night, as they celebrated their first major financial breakthrough, Aisha reflected on the journey. The wealth she and Tunde had acquired was not simply because she gave freely, it was because she had combined generosity with wisdom, strategy, and empathy. Tunde raised his glass to her. "You see, my love, generosity started the ripple, but it was your heart and mind that guided it to real success." Aisha smiled, feeling a profound sense of peace. She understood now that giving was not about blind sacrifice, it was about thoughtful action, courage in the face of doubt, and the willingness to create a positive impact. The superstition of Mama Tunde was true in a sense, but the real power had always been in Aisha herself, the choices she made, and the way she navigated life with kindness and intelligence. As they watched the city lights shimmer beyond their window, Aisha realized that true wealth was more than money. It was love, trust, influence, and the quiet knowledge that her actions could create ripples far beyond her own life. And in that moment, she knew they were just beginning. Not only a prosperous life, but a life built on purpose, generosity, and wisdom.